This conference will now be recorded.
Awesome. Well, hey, welcome everybody to session one of series one of our House Directors track for the House and Home series. We really appreciate you being here today. For those of you I haven't had a chance to meet, my name is Scott Fusell, and I'm the Director of Education and Dream Management for CSL Management. I'm a Beta Theta Pi, and I had a life-changing fraternity experience at Middle Tennessee State. And I'm also the host of House and Home here for this track. And man, we are so grateful that you decided to spend some time with us today by showing up. What that reveals to us is you care deeply about this experience. You care deeply about the students who call your house home, and you care deeply about making sure that they have as good an experience as they can possibly have within the four walls of these chapter houses. So for that and for your commitment to them and for doing work that matters, no, we are grateful. And we just want to say a huge thank you right off the bat. So thank you for being here. With me, as always, is Christina Kinzer. She's our senior operations specialist here at CSL, but she's also my right arm when it comes to our education efforts. She's a Zeta from Middle Tennessee State as well, and she is also unofficially the chat management wizard for the company. So again, I mentioned a little bit earlier that we'll have everybody in listen-only mode. And if you have questions as we're going through the content this morning, please jump into that chat cloud. You can see it with the little conversation cloud up there in your control panel. You'll see that there. Jump in, ask your question. Christina will interject as on the fly, or we'll wait to our Q&A session at the end of the session, at the end of today's session, and we'll jump in and answer your questions. But Christina, thanks for being with us. Thanks for managing the online conversation. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So as we talked and you shared in our social posts and in our emails, you know, today's conversation is about roadmaps and recommendations. So what do we want you to get out of today? All of our sessions, and we talked about this last week, all of our sessions are really built to help you feel connected, confident, and compelled. But today is really about relevant, reminded, and ready. We like to say things in threes. It's a little easier for me to remember, but we try really hard to provide timely and relevant content. So today is an opportunity for us to provide some information that hopefully offers some credibility or some clarity on industry trends and facts as we know them today. As we mentioned last week, everything in the industry right now and everything on our campuses and everything in the world, frankly, is a moving target right now. So we're doing the best we can to provide the most timely and the most relevant content we have as of this very minute. So we were making changes to this presentation up until last night. So you've got the latest and greatest. So that's part of our box we try to check every week, is making sure that we're providing relevant content that you can use immediately. The second thing we want to do is we want you to leave here reminded. Again, that goes back to that connected piece that we want you to leave all of our sessions feeling. We want you to be reminded that you're not in this alone. None of us have ever done this before. None of us have ever gone through a pandemic like this that has affected our entire community quite like this. So we want you to be reminded you are surrounded by people who want to help you. So please know that we need you to leave in each one of these sessions feeling connected with the content, but also connected with your community. So if you've not had a chance to either connect with folks that are on your campus or folks that are in the online community for the Fraternal House Directors online community, want to encourage you to do that. But we're going to really try our best today to make sure you're connected with the content as well as with each other. And then the final thing is we want to make sure that you're ready. If you leave today with 3 new tactics that you can execute on immediately, man, that's a big win for us. So how are we going to do that? Well, about 120 days before the first students moved in, we started to build a 90-day roadmap that would help people prepare for that first day when students move back. Man, what do we need to do to make sure that the house is ready? That is, the house is healthy, the house is safe, and we are organized and ready to go to receive students back into our houses. So we built this 90-day roadmap. Now we're about 60 days away from our first students moving back in. So we wanted to spend some time today kind of providing some details, maybe a greater in-depth conversation to the overview we provided last week, getting into what that roadmap actually looks like. So it is my pleasure this morning to introduce today's guest speaker. Woody Ratterman is our managing partner here at CSL Management, and just happens to be a chapter brother of mine from Middle Tennessee State. So Woody has been our go-to on all things COVID-19. He has spent the better part of the last 2 months really immersed in this issue and information on this pandemic. So again, everything has been a moving target, and he's bringing something new to us each day, it seems like, in terms of how we need to be thinking, preparing, and really educating our constituents on the best ways to make sure that our houses are safe and ready for students to move back in. So again, today is all about a roadmap and providing you some things to think about and to consider and to execute on as we move into the next 60 days. So with all that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Woody. And if you have questions, please jump in the chat box, and Christina will help us manage the conversation there. So Woody, please take it away. Thanks for being with us.
Yep. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate the opportunity to be here, and appreciate everybody taking time out of their Friday to join us. If you want to go to the first slide, we'll give you guys kind of an update, what we wanted to do before we kind of jump into talking about the roadmap itself. What are we hearing right now? So as Scott had mentioned, we've been doing our best to try to stay on top of everything that's going on in the industry, joining and participating in webinars and reading as much content that there is about what is this whole pandemic and COVID-19 doing to our industry, and more importantly, impacting it. And of course, today, trying to make all this relevant and directed to your role as a house director. So a couple of things that, at least from our perspective and our work in the industry right now, this is kind of where we have things scored, if you will, as we sit here today. One of the things is most of the universities are planning to meet in person. There is a running list that is out there on the industry on several websites that are tracking when universities make a decision and listing what that decision will be. I know the last time I viewed it, which was probably about 36 hours ago, we were inching closer to about 70% of those universities are meeting in person. And then on the other end of that spectrum, a little right around 7% are looking at meeting virtually and not in person. I think it's really important, though, depending on what university you are operating from, that you understand exactly what virtual learning and their definition for that, because in some instances, they may still be opening residence halls, they may be still inviting students to campus to utilize resources like libraries, dining facilities, and things of that nature. But for the most part, everyone is hoping to welcome their students back, and those 20% or so that have not made a full announcement of what their plans are for the fall, they are getting closer and closer, and they're looking at a hybrid model. We also know that of those who say they're coming in person, one of the biggest things that we're hearing, or most frequent, I should say, is that they're looking to either maybe try to come a week or two early if they can and make that announcement and welcome students back early. They're doing away with the fall break so that they don't leave and then come back and add to the spread, if you will, if we were in a situation where we had a lot of activity of coronavirus cases. And then not after Thanksgiving, not bringing them back, doing testing online and finals online, again, during the heavy season, or what we consider the heavy flu season of the year, trying to minimize them coming back to campus and maybe exposing others. Seems very logical and sensible. And then maybe starting a little bit later the spring semester, and probably they've not made announcements, or at least I haven't studied it yet to see. They'll probably make similar announcements depending on the environment about spring break and maybe doing away with that. We've not seen any consistency as it relates to occupancy strategy. Obviously, that's the biggest thing for your employers right now, is trying to figure out density in the houses. What's the financial impact going to be? What do we need to do in terms of our leases with members and all that goes with that, right? We have seen where, I know Nancy and a few of our friends from Indiana University, they're on the call, that they're going to single bed or making their rooms all single person rooms, which is a pretty dramatic impact. And we've seen where other universities are considering or qualifying their residence halls, if you will, as family units. And so they may employ the strategy that if one resident in that whole hall or in that whole residence facility, if you will, is diagnosed positive for COVID-19, they're going to treat them all as potentially exposed and try to quarantine them together. So there's still a lot of movement and fluidity as it relates to occupancy, but we do know that most universities that are opening in person are trying to make and take, if necessary, certain amount of rooms offline so that they can allow their on-campus house students to quarantine safely on campus if they are positively diagnosed. Other parts, a couple other key pieces. Organizations continue to evaluate options. I will tell you 30, 45 days ago, especially working with our clients, the outlook was very bleak. They weren't sure if they were going to be able to bring 50% of their members back into the chapter houses. They weren't even sure if we were going to be on campus. Certainly a more positive tone right now, which is great. They're thinking maybe 10 or 15% less residents in their facilities potentially. Certainly those with sleeping porches, cold dorm, warm dorms have a little bit more of a challenge and are working through that. But overall, we have a little bit more positive outlook that we're coming in to the fall. However, the second to last point, there still remains a lot of anxiety. That anxiety's kind of shifted, if you will, now to, okay, we go to the fall, we start and we open. God forbid that 45 days into it, we see a huge spike across the country in COVID-19 cases, especially in our demographic that's at that university campus, and we're shut down. And then immediately we're unwinding all this work that we spent 30, 40 days, the last previous 60 days, really trying to get ready for. And now all of a sudden we're having to shut down. So there's still anxiety, obviously, in the industry, but it's shifting a little bit now to, okay, we have a little bit of a better idea what we're dealing with going into the fall and what opening our house is going to look like. But man, we're going to say a lot of prayers between that time and maybe say September or October, hoping that we don't see a spike in cases. Students remain very eager to get on campus. We know that they want an in-person experience. They value that. I don't know if there's any more that we really need to debate on that piece. The statistics coming out of their virtual learning experience has not been that great for most of them. And then lastly, we're seeing, again, as we learn more about the COVID-19 virus, how it is transmitted, and what its impact is based on certain demographics of our society, we're seeing a little bit more and more reasonable response to recommendations and what we need to do to prepare. We're still very cautious, but at least at this standpoint, as we learn more, we're getting a little bit more reasonable from our standpoint. Next slide, Scott. So let's dig just a little bit into the roadmap itself and understand, as we talked about last week, you can go to our website and you can see all of these tools. And we're currently in the process as we move forward and we develop tools for our house corporations or our clients or just for the industry as a whole. If there's a way that we can modify it and apply it to your role as a house director, we're going to do that. And this roadmap that we have, we are currently looking at that and seeing how we can maybe create a version that is unique to just your role and what you guys need to be thinking about now 60 days out versus 90 days out. But there's some things that are still relevant on it, and I've tweaked some of the comments today to be more geared toward your role. First and foremost, you got to do your homework, especially right now as we're sitting and we're waiting for decisions and directions. Many of us are from our employers. You need to be doing your homework. We're trying to build and pull all the resources industry-wide onto our site, but you can certainly go to the NPC site for the women's side of the equation, the NIC, if you're in a men's facility, go to your organization site. They're probably going to take you into all the same sites that we have, but we're trying to pull that into one area for you if you're looking for anything related to the what's going on in the industry, what resources are being developed, or what may be at your may be available to you. Stay connected. This is, we tell right now we're telling our clients, you got to communicate. You need to be communicating to your members, to their parents, to your volunteers and stakeholders, to you, your staff. For you as a house director, I think it's really important. This is your time to decompress and refresh, right? This is summer. My God, we've got everybody out of the house. I need a break for a minute. Love our students, but I need a break, and that is important. You've probably had a little bit longer this summer than you normally had, but you certainly, I'm sure, have had disruption like everybody else into your vacation plans and other elements of it. So while we certainly want you to decompress and refresh and get ready for what will hopefully be a good fall, we can't completely check out. And I think you guys provide such an invaluable perspective of the day-to-day operations of that chapter house. And I think it is a huge miss on a house corporation front or a national organization's front if we're not at least engaging you in that process. I certainly understand, and we'll talk about a little bit. Some of us are sitting in situations where our employers may have employed a strategy for furloughing you temporarily so you can't work in different pieces, but fully intend to bring you back on. And there are different dynamics that may prohibit you from necessarily being as involved in the process. But certainly when you're able and it's appropriate, I think it is so good to be able to gain your insight as they're trying to make these decisions as they're looking into the fall. So I think it's just vital that you do your homework as well and you come to the table with the ability to offer solutions. Plan and develop contingencies. We talked a little bit about this last week, and I left this in here because at the same time, while we're talking, a lot of the decisions that have to be made ultimately rest with the organization. We all understand that, even as us as a vendor partner for many of the same folks that you work with. Ultimately, they've got to make the call on what they want and what that experience is going to look like for their members in the house. But you still need to the earlier point, staying relevant and staying and doing your homework and looking at these different things. What can you offer to that planning process and the developing the contingencies? Because lo and behold, when we do bring the students back, we do open these facilities, especially for our friends on the local house corporation front. Sometimes our local house corporation, once everything's open, they have lives and their lives get in the way, and you may not see them for a few months, or you may be trying to pull them back in. So it is critical that you understand what these contingencies are going to be, because you're going to be the one implementing them more often than not, at least on the front end. Scott, go to the next slide. Couple points here. One on the ensure your house is secure and being monitored. That's a no-brainer. I know most of you on this call, this is an everyday event, but as we've told our clients and we've told the industry, especially right now, people know, unfortunately, that houses are empty and they're going to take advantage of that, or there may be just one person there. So security is always paramount. Not only are we now dealing with a pandemic, but now we have the riots that are taking place for some of you that are maybe in some of those areas. So security should always be top of mind and something that you should always be monitoring and working with your house corporations and national organizations about. On the finance piece, again, we understand a lot of this may not be within your control. Some of it may not be in your purview. Everybody in your organizations have different responsibilities when it comes to budgets and how money is spent. But I think, again, we understand the lens in which you see things and which you watch and operate from is a very valuable lens to gain information from. So if your local house corporation, your organizations, if you've got things to offer, things away, especially as it relates to saving money right now, I'm hoping that you are certainly offering that and bringing that to their attention. We cannot, I guess, understate the fact of how much of an impact that organizations are taking financially, the hit that they're taking because of this pandemic. On the national front, you're talking millions of dollars. On the local house corporations, you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars. And that's just immediate. And then we start looking and forecasting to the fall and beyond, we still have tens of thousands of dollars that hits to revenue for our local house corporations. We're still going to have millions of dollars that hit in some situations on our national housing front as well. So cash is paramount right now. Managing our expenses, making sure that we're doing everything we can to minimize those, knowing that in some instances, like on the cleaning front, we may need to spend more. So anything that you can do as you think about the day-to-day front and where there might be opportunities. I don't know of anybody out there, at least that we've been talking to, who has said, well, thanks for that, but that's only a $50 a week savings. They want to know anything and everything that they can hear in terms of what might be a savings at this point. So anything that you can do on that front in your role, and any other way that you expand, if you are more involved in the budgetary process, there's certainly a lot to consider and ponder out there right now. And I know that the House Corporation and your national organizations welcome any insight that you may have because of your role and what you see day to day at the House. Next slide, Scott. Two big pieces here that I alluded to a little bit last week, and I'll just kind of update you on a few things. Obviously, take inventory, talk supplies. Many of you in your role do handle the supply ordering, whether you're working with your kitchen management company or some other type of group organization, that purchasing group, if you will, on the national front. It's just key that you're really involved in that and getting your orders placed now. For those of you that might buy stuff at a big box store, Costco, something similar to that, especially on the paper product front, now is the time to think about a more global purchasing organization that are out there. Culinary Consultants is just one that comes to top of mind that does a lot of group purchasing for our industry. I actually work with some of the kitchen management companies out there as well. On the PPE front, we're seeing a little bit more calm, if you will, with masks and gloves, things of that nature on the PPE front, at least for what we need, right? We don't need the medical grade frontline type deals, but what is reasonable given to our exposure. But the other piece that's still out there is hand sanitizer is the big element that's hard to get a hold of in some instances. So we've talked about in our industry presentations and our talks with clients, hedge your bets. So if we have the ability to order some of this stuff for our clients right now. We've never been in the supply chain ever. We're in a limited capacity right now just because our clients have been asking. So our thought is hedge your bets. If you want to order from us, order from the kitchen management, order from a group purchasing, especially on the hand sanitizer front. We're hearing, and it's good, as we work with a lot of our kitchen management partners, they're feeling like they've got some pretty good sources on the hand sanitizer front. And if we order now, meaning immediately, we've got one that said they needed the orders today, they feel like they'll have it by the time fall comes around. Educated on cleaning, obviously this and continues to be a very hot topic, and it's one that has evolved almost daily, and it's evolved in a good way, in our opinion, from the original thoughts of we're going to be needing to spend $2 to $5 a square foot to get the house cleaned and how often we're going to have to do that, to now we're thinking, okay, what if we use foggers or electrostatic sprayers every now and then? That's more of like 10 to 15 cents a square foot, so it's a little bit more financially doable. But even then, that could be $2,000 or $3,000 per application. When we're talking about very limited funds for most of us right now. So we were on a call Wednesday, MJ Insurance, who, if you work for a sorority, they work with a lot of the sororities. Them and Holmes Murphy are your two biggest insurance brokers out there. Both of their sites are fantastic with a lot of resources about cleaning. But they had a gentleman on from New York City that is in the restoration business, but specializes in difficult cleans, right? Murder scenes, awful situations. He had written an article that was kind of like, let's remember and be sensible in terms of what a virus is and how you actually effectively clean for a virus. He provided a lot of practical stuff. And at the end of the day, he said, there's nothing better than elbow grease. There's nothing more effective than walking around with a rag with disinfectant, spray it on the rag, make sure it is highly concentrated, wipe the surface and clean it. And if you can, allow it to sit for 10 minutes. And that is going to be your most effective in doing that as reasonably as possible on a frequency basis. So understand the options. There are different pieces that are out there. Again, there's a lot of material out there. One of the things that came from that webinar that I listened to, and if you guys have listened to any ones that I've been a panel on, especially on the men's side, I've been pretty adamant on the men's side of the equation. We've said, look, we were going to have to introduce some type of professional cleaning. We cannot rely solely on our undergraduate men to clean our facilities moving forward on the men's side of the equation. There's a lot that still do. I still agree with that. I still think we've got to bring professional cleaning, but this gentleman was speaking about the ability to share the responsibility. Now, again, you need to talk to your organization. I know this can get a little out there thinking about asking our members to do some of this stuff, but he was just talking about in his own office, they all sign up and every 2 or 3 hours, somebody's walking around cleaning the high touch area. So where you see my point here where it says it will take a village, I think the reality of it, to be able to afford someone to come in 2 or 3 times a day of professional cleaning to do high touch areas is not realistic in our budgets, or something that we're probably going to seriously entertain. But I think as a house director and as our residents and taking some ownership and accountability in that, is there a way to maybe create a rotation to where someone's helping with that? I would like to think it's feasible. I would think we're still a chapter house and not necessarily just a rental apartment, and we don't have any true responsibilities to the overall infrastructure. Here it is their home as well. So I encourage you to open those conversations up and talk about that, and where you can work with the residents and develop a shared agreement about how often people go around on these high touch areas, which he had pointed out: doorknobs, our handles for toilets, and our sinks and our sink handles, light switches, and then countertops, and high use table areas. Outside of that, he said, on a regular basis, you should be good. So long story short, let's be sensible. There's a lot of information out there. It's important that you study up on it, but I think as a industry and as we go into the fall, we're going to be well prepared on the cleaning front. The big thing is do we have a resource, and is your cleaning company able to be that resource? If not, you need to identify it, that if you do have an outbreak in the house, that they can come in and do the necessary cleaning so that you can mitigate that quickly. And then the last nugget that we would give to you is that if you're not already on the schedule for summer cleaning, I would encourage you to get that on their schedule quickly. Obviously, there's a lot of business to be had. If you own a cleaning company right now, you are in a great position. So if you haven't already done it, make sure you got your summer cleanings on the schedule. All right, Scott. A few more points and then I'll be done. Evaluate food services. We talked a lot about this last week. I'm not going to delve too much into it. A lot of resources out there. We think for the most part, we're not going to have our serving lines as business as usual or buffets. It's going to be maybe some type of plated or to-go box scenario, at least on the front end. There's a lot of discussions about guests, or how they're going to handle out-of-house members in food service. For the most part, we're hearing that they're going to try to eliminate both of those aspects in terms of guests and out-of-house, at least initially, kind of see how things happen. But every situation is going to be different. Every campus, I know, like our friends at the University of Arkansas, they have their Chicken Fried Fridays. And I mean, it's hundreds upon hundreds of people going through all these different houses. I'm sure that's going to look different in the fall. So food's a big piece. It's a big piece of our budget. It's a big piece of the experience. So we need to spend some time and do what we can to be well prepared for the fall on that front. Layout modifications. Again, this is an area that, especially our friends like in Indiana, Purdue, the Midwest, where we have a lot of sleeping porches, cold dorms, warm dorms, looking at how we can provide more space, maybe utilize our day rooms to create some type of appropriate level of social distancing. One of the things with this tool we're created, we'll have a link. Many of you may have already seen it, especially our friends from the University of Illinois that are on the call. LA County out in California put together some diagrams related to communal living, where you have bunk beds, high concentration of people sleeping head to foot, creating 6-foot distances, and giving some really good illustrations. So that'll be out there and available as well. Stay informed about recruitment. Again, our role, we talked about a little bit on a house corporation standpoint, a house director standpoint. Our role in recruitment is normally more of support, if anything, but recruitment's going to be different. There's a lot of virtual aspects that are going to be a part of it. And again, it's about the experience. If we talk about our differentiator as an industry and what makes us different than maybe living in an apartment or other pieces, it's that experience. And a good part of that experience is you and what you're able to do to make that house feel like a home, and your role and all the stuff that you do for the members day in and day out to make sure they're having a fabulous experience. So again, going back to your think tank, staying relevant, providing solutions. What are some things that you might be able to do to help them as they're trying to think through recruitment in this new world? Review the event calendar now. As people are talking about visitor policies, we're talking about social distancing, we're talking about density in our facility. These are all terms that you're going to be hearing quite a bit of in the next 60 days. Let's talk about our calendar, Parents Weekend, Alumni Weekend. If football is back on the calendar and you're at the University of Alabama, what's that going to look like? All these different pieces of our events. Now is a great time to start taking a look at them in the eyes of the fact that we have this virus that's out there, and we're going to be doing business a little different in the fall. And then lastly, your role, and this is something that we're certainly going to be hitting on, I think our next one, right, Scott, that we're going to be talking about the roles and responsibilities. And I would really encourage you that are on here and ask, send in your questions to Scott on what you have or what you're wondering, or any nuggets of information that you think all of us should be hearing and knowing about what you're seeing in your role. This is going to be a really important conversation next week, but there's going to be changes in responsibilities. There's going to be discussions about your personal safety and what concerns you most. Again, we have a demographic of people walking in the house 0 to 24, and we continue to track this. I think the latest number, and this may be a few weeks old, but we had 108 deaths so far from COVID-19 in the United States with individuals from 0 to 24. It's not a lot. It's not very well impacted. And of course, it's always dangerous to talk age at any time, especially in this environment. But some of us, me included, are getting closer to those ages where we're vulnerable. And some of you are working in an environment where your residents are not. And so having those conversations about what it means to you and your interaction with them and how we work effectively, and where you still are making a positive impact to the experience and it's working for everyone. Those are some important conversations you should be having as you're working through it, and hopefully bringing solutions and not just pointing out all the problems that there may be in terms of your setup. Hopefully you can have a productive and engaging conversation about that, because we can understand this is, as I said last week, we know right now there's a lot of uncertainty for many of you on this call in terms of your role of the job and what the fall is going to look like. So where you can and where appropriate, make sure you're engaging in those conversations. I think that's it, Mr. Fusel.
It is too. So I will say, actually, let me go back really quickly. So you intentionally or unintentionally hit on a couple of upcoming sessions. You mentioned some of the modifications that are going to be needed, and we're talking not just in the dining room, but in some of the common areas of the house. Well, that'll be one of our upcoming sessions also. We've got a couple of resources we're bringing in, a couple of our industry partners who are going to come in. One's a designer, the other's one of our kitchen management partners, and they're going to really be talking about what are the different ways that we're going to have to manipulate and alter the way that we are currently living and operating to make sure that we are creating spaces for socially distanced environments. So that's coming up, and then you already hit on next week, which we're really going to dive deep into how the operations of the facility is going to look different, and what kind of impact that's going to have on each of you. So that we're, as we mentioned, we're trying really hard to keep these sessions to 30 to 45 minutes. But if next week's evolves into a town hall where you're just peppering us with questions, know that we'll stay on the call as long as we need to make sure that your questions get answered, especially the ones that specifically are in relation to that area. So with that being said, I'm going to lean on Christina. Christina, what kind of questions are you seeing pop up in the chat this morning? Is there anything that have any popped up there that we need to address? And what are you seeing?
Yes, so Kay had a question. She wanted to know if you have heard anything about having thermometers and taking members and staff's temperatures on a daily basis. I know this has been a big question, so.
In the past it has, Kay, but I've not heard much of that discussion at this point in terms of them having some type of mandate of testing everybody's temperature when they've come in. There were a lot of early recommendations related to maybe even doing spot checking, but who's going to do it? what is if their temperature is 99.8 versus 100.1, what does that mean? What are you going to do with that information? Who's tracking that information? So I would say, by and large, I'm going to guess that the recommendations out there have a thermometer, a non-touch thermometer in case you need it or somebody wants it because they may think they have a fever, and if they want to have the ability to test it, I think that's certainly reasonable. But as it relates to having our house director stand at a door or doing random checks and different things, I've not heard that there's a lot of push on that front yet.
Great question. Christina, anything else? You're muted.
Yeah.
I'm just talking to myself. Yes, Jack said that the food service providers are going to have thermometers in the kitchen for daily health screenings for their employees and any vendors that should come to the kitchen to service the kitchen. Thank you, Jack. That's helpful.
Yeah. Any other questions that you're seeing pop up, Christina?
That's the only one I've got, unless anybody has a question and didn't throw it in the chat.
Okay.
Oh, yes, here's one. Martha asks, do you think that masks should be required in the common areas of the house?
Yeah, so what we have coming out, you'll see, especially for visitors coming to the house, we have it out there that they would be recommended right now to wear a mask in the common areas. I think where that gets tricky is if I'm a resident, do I want to walk around the house that I live in all day in a mask when I leave my room? I think that becomes a little different. I think if it's a member, an out-of-house member that walks into the house, maybe we ask them to walk in with a mask, wash their hands, and then we're good to go. That's going to be a tough one that is really going to have to be a local decision in that. I mean, I'm out traveling again. I just started the last couple of weeks, and certainly it's wearing a mask on a plane. I totally understand it and the close confines of it. It's not comfortable. It's not fun, but it's certainly a necessary element in this environment. But I think when you get into our common areas, depending on what is going on in your particular area as it relates to the COVID activity and where we are with mandates and other things, there may be some different, and then what part of the country you're in as well certainly can inform some of that. So in general thinking, we are putting out there, certainly if you have a visitor, your vendors, when they're coming to do work at the house, they should be in PPE for sure. But as it relates to your members, out of house versus residents, I mean, it's obviously a private organization. They need to have those conversations. But we'd certainly, at least as they come into the house and initially when they're in the common areas, a mask would seem to make sense currently.
Hey, Woody, I've had a couple of people ask about the LA Communal Living, the LA County Communal Living document. Can you let everybody know where to find that?
Yes, so it's actually, and I know Steve's on the call right now. He was working on that when we started this call. It will be on our website under chapter operations when Ryan's able to get it up and loaded. And then in the document that will actually be out there, the planning document that's coming out, that'll be a supplement to the roadmap that will be under the 90-day roadmap on our website as well. There will be a direct link to it. And it's just an illustration of different layouts and different pieces, but it's certainly helpful. And our friends friends at the University of Illinois could certainly forward it to many of you, I'm sure.
I'll be sure,
Yes,
Christina, let me jump in there. And one of the things, once we get that up on our site, I'll be sure to share those on the Sherman House Directors Online Community Facebook group as well. So you'll be able to get those resources in a couple of different spots.
And I did put the link in the chat for everybody to that exact, the Our Beyond COVID-19 page. So if you click on there and then under chapter resources, that will be there. Okay, and then we have had a few more questions come through. Lorraine asks, should the chapters provide the masks?
Yeah, so we do recommend that you have, I mean, a good surgical grade type mask, disposable masks that we have, that we've got and others have too. It's about 98 cents a mask. So we are recommending that, at least on initially, that there is a routine supply of PPE in terms of masks and maybe gloves. Again, that can be a personal decision on some of that, but we would think, I mean, it's a decision. Is it a house corporation's responsibility or an organization's responsibility that they provide masks to all of their members? Going out and maybe getting the 8511 3M, which is a more robust mask for the general public, that we've recommended to them, that they have a few of those on site for house directors, for sure, just in case if activity gets really high in different pieces. The 8511 mask is one that is more robust and can be available for staff, and that's something that you'll see in our recommendations. But I think having a regular supply of disposable masks at the house and available if a young lady or young man comes, or they're going somewhere and they forgot a mask or need it, that we can offer that. It's not an expensive proposition.
Okay, I'm going to jump in there. We were losing.
And be able to do that on a regular basis, I think, is a nice gesture.
Okay. I want to jump in there. I think based on the grin I see on Christina's face, we were missing a bunch of what you just said, Woody. So
Are there any other, Christina?
Cutting out. So I think you've got a son and a daughter who are down the hallway and they're streaming Netflix, which is interrupting your bandwidth. So so all of us on the call right now can appreciate that. But really quickly, what I think I heard you say, if I want to summarize that, it's it's each individual organization's job to make that call, but our recommendation as a company is that you should have the entry level masks, so to speak, that are about $1 a piece on hand for guests when they're coming into the facility. So the more the higher grade mask that you recommended, I think it's I forgot the exact number off the top of my head, but something that's a little bit more robust, you would want 85. To have those on. Thank you. We would want those available for our house directors to be used on a regular basis. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Christina, what else you have there?
Okay, so let's see. We have a comment that some of the other seminars have talked about disinfecting before the students return, which is a higher level of sanitizing than what they would typically do.
And it's an 8511 mask.
Go ahead, Christina.
Anyway, and so she's asking if we feel that like if this is necessary, considering the fact that the facilities have been empty since April. So Woody, did you hear that question? Uh-oh, we've lost his audio now.
Yeah, we lost Woody.
Okay, I know that we have talked about this in another webinar that we did, and I'll let, if Woody can hear me or Scott can jump in, but what we have heard is that that is not necessary, that the house has been vacant and that the additional sanitizing is, as soon as somebody walks in the house, that sanitizing is not going to be valid anymore, but that the house has been open, and so the cleaning and regular sanitizing that you do before the fall opening of the house, that should cover it.
That should be sufficient. Yeah, if you've had limited activity or no activity in that house, the more robust cleanings are not, or what we're understanding, are not required. A traditional deep clean that you get done every summer, and with obviously with the added emphasis on those high touch areas, but that's all of the more robust cleaning that are outrageously expensive. We're not hearing right now that is recommended, and that a traditional or deep clean that you would get on a normal summer is sufficient right now for all the reasons that Christina just mentioned. Because one of the reasons that for that kind of adjustment and recommendation over the last few weeks is the CDC is actually feeling now that the virus is not as transmittable on hard surfaces as we once believed. And in addition to that, if we spend $3,000 or $4,000 on that additional cleaning in the facility, once students come in, now you're in a position where you got to redo it again if you want to invest in that. So no, your traditional deep cleaning should have you covered. But again, we would encourage you to go back to what Woody was saying earlier and having that rotation built in for your regular cleaning of high touch areas. So I hope that clears that question up a little bit. What else are you seeing,
Yeah,
Christina?
that is what I've got.
Awesome. Well, hey, everybody, we appreciate you jumping in today. Let's start wrapping up here. So a few walkaways and takeaways. First off, if we didn't get to your question or if something pops up later, please feel free to hit us up. You can either enter your question in the Fraternal House Directors online community in the Facebook group, or you can reach out to us directly. Happy to get back to you at our first opportunity. So don't let this be the end of the conversation. Let this be a conversation starter, not an end to the conversation. So a few walkaways and takeaways as we wrap up today. So first off, again, we want to encourage you, just like last week, we mentioned, let's be diligent, but let's not panic. And if we can model the right or the appropriate reactions and behaviors, it's going to be a lot easier and a lot more likely that the students are going to follow our lead as we create a safer, healthier environment for them to live in the fall. So would encourage you really to check your reactions and your behavior, make sure you're modeling the right processes, right reactions, the right behaviors, so our students have a lead to follow. So, and you'll hear me constantly going back to the connected piece of this and how important that is. I don't believe that any of us know as much as all of us. There has never been a more important time for us to communicate with each other, for us to collaborate with each other, and for us to innovate together. So everybody here has their special, unique gift, and you know something that somebody else doesn't know. So please, 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 let's make sure that we are sharing that information as a group, as a community, so that everybody is providing the safest, healthiest environment for our students to move back in the fall, and one that is safe and healthy for you to be working and living in as well. The last couple of things I'll hit on, Woody mentioned it earlier, the CSL Housing Hub. Christine, I think, actually put a link on that and a link to that in the chat. Again, that's not all CSL resources. We've tried to pull as much information as we can find from the industry to create a central point for you to go to find the answers that you need based on a specific topic. So it's all broken out by topic specific. So whether that's chapter operations or facility operations or kitchen management or industry events, you're going to find it there. So would encourage you to be aware of those resources and take full advantage of them. You're also going to have a 60-day roadmap and a preparing for fall house director edition hitting your inbox or the Facebook group soon. So be on the lookout for those resources. Hopefully they will provide some additional clarity. And that'll be kind of one of if you're in a class and you had to leave behind, that would be what we'd be leaving behind for you today. But obviously we'll be sending those digitally here in the coming days. And then the last couple of things we'd offer up to you is to really make sure you're taking advantage of additional learning opportunities. There are industry-wide webinars happening daily. So, and we've got links to most of those, even if they're just recordings, in the Facebook groups, or in the website. So check that link that Christina shared in the chat. If you go under industry events and a specific topic, you're going to find a link to those specific webinars within that link. So the next two things I'd share with you. Sure, Christina.
Sorry, I was just going to say I dropped the links back in the chat one more time just so they're fresh in everyone's feed. But one is to the Beyond COVID-19 resource page, and the other one is to the CSL Advanced, the House Director Learning Series, in case anybody wants to go in and sign up for the other sessions that we have coming up as well. So those are both fresh in your feeds.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So, so kind of along those lines, our next session is going to be on next Friday. So if you haven't registered for that, please go into the site and do so, and make sure you share with your friends. We're going to be getting into the changes we're going to be seeing from an operations perspective within the facility and how that's going to impact your role and what we can do to support that. So next week's going to be a really valuable session. So we really encourage you to attend that. And I mentioned this last week, but we're also doing a track for volunteers and for campus professionals and for National House Corporations professional or staff members. So similar path and many of the same topics, but with a different twist that's more applicable based on your role. So we're going to be kicking that series off on the 9th, which is next Tuesday. So if you've got a local house corporation volunteer that you report up to, or you have an industry expert or a campus professional or a national house corporation that you report up to, you might want to make them aware that that series is coming their way, because all of these all of these sessions are designed to get us all on the same page, so we're all built to better support each other. So I would encourage you to pass that information along to them. So with that being said, again, next week, these times and our roles, they are a-changing. And we're going to dive into that in our, obviously, Series 1, Session 2 next Friday. And we are eager to have you back on that session. Between now and then, please stay in touch with us. If there's a question you have, or you just want to connect about a specific issue, there's our contact information. Feel free to reach out to Woody or to myself. More importantly, or as importantly, we want to encourage you to stay in touch with each other. So again, I've mentioned it a number of times today. If you have not joined Fraternal House Directors online community and started to take advantage of some of the resources and conversation that is there, really want to encourage you to do that. So thanks again for everybody being with us today. Really grateful for the good work that you're doing and for you investing in yourself so you can invest in these students in our facilities in really meaningful ways this fall. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next Friday. Take care, everybody.
Have a great weekend.